You didn't? No, you didn't say the magic word.
I think so.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's called children, right?
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of Kabbalah Coffee. It's great to see everybody. Special edition because we're all here together on Sunday morning studying Torah and Kabbalah and here in unity and brotherhood and sisterhood, and it's really wonderful to see everybody here. So, let's get started. Sometimes you see things, you ever have this sense that something is going to work out or happen and then it does?
Yes.
You ever have that sense and it doesn't?
Yes.
Also, right?
Yes.
But it's cool when it happens, when it works out, right?
Yes.
Does everybody get the email, the Kabbalah Coffee email?
Yes.
Okay, so I know with emails, people get a lot of emails, so I'm not going to ask who read it and whatever. But I referenced, although who read it? Okay. So there's a rabbi that I mentioned in the email who was a Chassidic master. He was born in 1787 and he passed away in 1859. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, known as the Kotzker Rebbe. Kotzk was the place. Kotzker is like the guy from Kotzk, the Rebbe from Kotzk, the Kotzker Rebbe. He was known to have very sharp, very incisive, very sharp sayings. Deep, sharp, not always the kindest, but very to the point. Like a good zetz, like a good one-liner or two-liners. And so I was thinking of him, of the Kotzker Rebbe, in the context of today's class. So last week we spoke about the advantages of friendship in the context of being able to study and self-improve. In the context of study, it's good to have a friend. It's good to have not only a friend that agrees with you, but more importantly, a friend that disagrees with you. Some adversarial collaboration, being able to discuss ideas with someone who doesn't see the world like you. That sharpens ideas, makes them better, makes them stronger, makes them deeper, and you know what? Makes them maybe even a little bit truer. So there's an advantage in collaboration when it comes to ideas. When it comes to our emotional, character, moral, and spiritual lives, the same thing is true. How does a person improve? Typically not alone, not by themselves. We improve with the help and the assistance of others. Number one, others point out the flaws that we didn't see within ourselves. Number two, verbalizing our flaws to others makes us really feel that makes them even more real than they were before we verbalized them. Speaking it over with somebody can also help us come up with ideas and solutions because they bring those to the table. And in general, it's good to share our burdens, our spiritual troubles, what's going on in our lives with others, as it says in Scripture, that if a person has daiga belev, person has a concern or worry in their heart, yashchenu, cast it away, but as our sages say, yisichenu lacherim, we studied the Talmud last week, discuss it with someone else, because it can help. And so, the point of this entire series is all about understanding the roots of personal conflict and the roots of unity. Last week we spoke about the benefits of unity. When you and I can get along with someone else, it helps ideas, and it helps our ideas, and it also helps our inner character. Make sense? All of that was last week. This week we get into once again we go back to the tragedy that it is when we can't get along with each other, and how devastating that can be, and how that manifests itself in so many ways that are destructive. It's so interesting because I haven't looked at the English yet for today's class, which is fine because I prepared it from the Hebrew. But in the Hebrew, there's a word that translates as cancel. And I don't know how it's translated here, because I think this was before cancel culture became a line. But the notion that you disagree with somebody. And first of all, are you familiar with the concept of cancel culture?
Yes.
Yes? It's like if you disagree with somebody, so like totally negating their existence.
They're like dead to you now, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're done. Like get off Twitter, get off the internet, cancel you, like you don't exist. Okay, there's a line literally in the Hebrew. It's a few times in chapter 11, this chapter that we're going to study today, where it uses a Hebrew word that could easily be translated as cancel, where a person, because of their own ego, with the excuse of all the other excuses, but primarily driven by their own ego, is ready, willing, and able to cancel someone out completely, negate them, under the guise of spirituality, under the guise of all sorts of halos, but in truth it's because of ego. So it got me thinking as I was preparing today's class about a statement from the Kotzker Rebbe. Again, going back to the Kotzker Rebbe. It's all connected, by the way. If you don't, sometimes it may not be clear where I'm going with this. I'm always going, hopefully, always going somewhere with stuff. So I started with the Kotzker Rebbe, now I'm back, but I wanted to fill in between to let you know the train of thought. The Kotzker Rebbe has a beautiful line which we'll explore. I have 48 sayings of the Kotzker Rebbe. I got really inspired Friday based on a saying that is related to what I just explained up until now about the content of what we're going to study today. And so I was reminded about the Kotzker Rebbe, and then I looked it up, and then I found a nice compilation of 48 of his sayings. And I said, you know what? Let's start the class on Sunday by exploring his sayings. They're powerful in life, and they're going to lead into today's discussion of chapter 11 of our text. And so this morning, I opened up my phone, opened it up, and I saw the battery. I'm kidding. So I turned on my phone, and I decided before I even searched with my voice, right? Kotzker Rebbe, before I even did that, I had a feeling that if I was, this is just a feeling that I had, if I was being so into the Kotzker Rebbe, like out of nowhere, there's got to be something. There's got to be something. So I looked him up, and you can do the same. Kotzker Rebbe, his Wikipedia page. He has a Wikipedia page. His yard site is tonight. Happens to be his yard site is the 22nd of Shvat, which is tonight. It's also the yard site of Rebbe Chaim Mushka Schneerson, the Rebbe's wife, who passed away in 1988. Yeah. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that sometimes things work out. That's how I started the class. You know, sometimes you kind of anticipate how something there's gonna be some synchronicity, and it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. But interestingly enough, it worked out. So, for what it's worth, this is a handout that has 48 of his sayings. Let's explore it. Listen, it's proximity to his yard site, so it's good either way, especially because it ties into today's discussion in our class, Learning How to Love.
What was the Hebrew word? Was it bittul?
Which one? No, cancel? No, bittul is self-nullification. Bittul is self-cancel, but no one uses it like that.
Okay.
In other words, no one would say canceling self. The Hebrew word that I was referring to is yafsik.
You spell it in Hebrew?
Yud, Pei, Samach, Yud, Kuf. Yafsik.
Yud, Hey, Samach, Yud,
Kuf.
Kuf.
Kuf. And there's another phrase in here.
Oh, hafsik, like to end.
To end.
Yeah.
To cancel.
Is that, I'm curious, that's, when I grew up, if you did something, if a child did something, somebody did something, like you married outside of the faith, that your parents would rip their clothing and that you no longer.
No. That's something else. No, for mourning, it's no. That's.
No, it's that you didn't die, but that you did something
Oh.
that you were basically canceled, or you didn't exist anymore.
Maybe. I don't know if they used it in that way, but I'm not sure what the Hebrew Yiddish phrase that they would have used.
Yeah.
Things have evolved since then, which
I'm
is
so glad.
which is a good thing. Because that never worked. That never worked. I tell people all the time, like people ask me, not all the time, but on occasion, what should I do? My child, my this, my that. My advice is always the same, huh? No, that's not my advice. My advice is always, if you maintain a relationship with them, if the goal is influence, so, right, if the ultimate goal is influence, right, we talked last week, I think, about positions versus interest, right? So position is how I feel about this thing. The interest is the larger picture. If the larger picture is being able to influence the child, so that only happens when there's a connection, and when that connection is paved with love. If you've like cut them off, well then I guess we're done here. I mean, that's not, so what's the big picture? If the ultimate goal is, right, again, even if your goal is that they should see things the way you see things, even from that selfish or whatever that perspective, we're much better served to keep those channels of love open. Either way, let's jump into the 48 sayings. 48 sayings of Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, the Kotzker Rebbe. These are not all of his sayings, but these are top 48, or some of the top 40. Greatest hits, a compilation. Okay, here we go. Number 1. These are all pretty fantastic. A horse walks down the middle of the road. A human being, on the other hand, sticks to one extreme or the other. You read? You get this? Yes? What is the lesson, the life lesson?
The middle path.
If you walk down the middle of the road, you bump into a horse.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Watch where you step.
Watch where you step. Pick a side, take a position, stand up for something. Don't just be like, well, indecisive in the middle. It's good. You gotta be bold sometimes. He was a very bold individual. He was very bold, very sharp, as I mentioned before, very bold. Not into the whole like, a little this, little that. Come on, choose a side. By the way, today it's the same thing. Cars go in the middle of the road, but a horse is better because it's like, just. Well, cars also have the horsepower, but that's another thing. So, cars are in the middle and sidewalks are on the side. It was the same thing then. Okay, number 2. People tend to look upwards, contemplating the mysteries of the heavens. They would do well to look inward and examine what's happening within themselves, right? And that's, again, a sharp message, that sometimes we spend our time thinking about the lofty things and we neglect what needs to be fixed inside. It reminds me of a joke where this husband is at the bar, he's talking to his friends, and he says, yeah, my wife and I, we split duties. So I focus on like the really important issues, like world peace and the problems with the Middle East and North Korea and China, all the big problems. And she takes care of like the smaller stuff, like the kids and the house and the food, like all the right. So sometimes we look. It was a joke, right? Because like meanwhile he's theoretically saving the world and not doing much, and she's really getting everything done. So the point here is sometimes we contemplate the big things and forget the practical things. So it's good also to look inside. Number 3, when people ask me what not to do, I can tell them. But to know what they should do, that's something they need to ask themselves. Something they need to ask themselves. It's powerful. The premise of number 3 of this statement is that we all know inside what it is that we need to do. Somewhere deep inside, we kind of know. Yeah, of course, there's more information that we can get that can help us, get to that place, sometimes even of knowing, but most of the time, the awareness, the basic awareness is inside. So to tell you what not to do, I can tell you, don't do this, don't do that. But tell you what to do, you kind of know already. Okay, number 4. I told you the story about Rabbi Weinreb from Baltimore. Have I told you this story? He's the head of the OU. OU is, they do a lot of things. I'm going like this because they put, the OU is a big organization. It's called the Orthodox Union, big Jewish organization that amongst the things that they do is that they certify kosher products. So if you go into a store and you look at Heinz ketchup, for example, if you look closely, you'll see there's a little circle with a U inside. Not the R inside, that's something else. Not the TM, that's something else. But the OU or the OK is also another kosher symbol, but the OU is a kosher symbol. So the head of the OU, or one of the heads of the OU, is a man named Rabbi Weinreb. So when he was a younger man, I've told this story before, but it's been maybe a little while, so I'll tell it again. When he was younger, right after school, right after college, go into psychology or other fields that he had opportunities to go into. And he also had questions about faith, questions about Judaism and faith and God and theological questions. He was at a crossroads in life. He had a lot of uncertainty. And he knew a fellow in Baltimore who was a Chabad guy, and the Chabad guy tells him, why don't you call and ask for advice from the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, in Crown Heights. So he wasn't a Chabad guy, and what does he know? He wasn't like a chassid, he wasn't a disciple of the Rebbe, so his first reaction was, no thanks, not for me. That's no, that's for you. Not cancel, but not for me. Yeah, it's for you. You're a Chabadnik. You do your thing with your Rebbe, but not for me. But his questions kept on increasing and whatever, and he wasn't getting clarity, so he decides to call the office. 770 Eastern Parkway, right by the number 3 train. Who has been to Crown Heights? Yeah?
Across the street. The train is across the street.
It's right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, okay. So he calls up the office, and he's speaking with the secretary, and he feels embarrassed because, some of these questions that he has, he doesn't want to put his name on it. He'd rather be anonymous over the phone and ask these questions and maybe ask for, a spiritual blessing or whatever it is for clarity. And so he doesn't mention his name. He just says, I have some questions about this, that, or the other. And he hears on the other line a click. And back in the day, when you hear a click on the line, what does that mean? Wait, I couldn't hear. What?
Somebody picked up or hung up.
Somebody else picked up. So basically, the Rebbe in his office had, the lines were connected, right? The telephone lines were connected. It's like when you were a kid and your mother picked up the phone when you were on the phone, right? And it's like, Mom, get off. Okay. Not that ever happened to me, but I'm just saying that's a stereotype. So he hears a click, not a hang-up click, but a welcome to the call click. And he's curious. And then he hears another voice. And he's able to recognize that it is probably the Rebbe's voice. And the Rebbe asks the question, what's the call about? So the secretary explains the nature of the call and the questions, and the fact that this guy is from Baltimore. And the Rebbe says, you should tell him. Now he's on the line. Everyone's on the line together, right? So Weinreb and the secretary and the Rebbe, they're all on the line. So the Rebbe says, so tell him that there's a man named Weinreb in Baltimore who can answer him. You with me? So he says, I'm Weinreb. You with me on the story so far? And the Rebbe says, sometimes one has to consult themselves for the answers. That was it. I heard this story. You know what? It's like all the stories, right? You go searching for the answers, and it's right in your own backyard. That's all the great stories have that as a plot twist, right? Like the guy who has a dream about the treasure under the bridge. He goes to the bridge and starts digging, and the officer says, "What are you doing?" "I'm digging for treasure." "Are you crazy? Why?" "I had a dream. I had a dream that there was a treasure under Yankel, the peddler's house, and there was a treasure under his yard. And he's Yankel the peddler." So he goes home and he digs, and it's really under his yard. Sorry for saying that story very short, but that's a story. By the way, there's actually a story. That's a real story. And the guy who found the treasure built a shul, built a synagogue in Poland, and it's still around. Rabbi Schusterman a few years ago went to Poland and davened at that shul, at the synagogue. I digress. His name wasn't Yankel. I don't know what his name was, but that's my go-to name. Okay, bring it back to Weinreb. I heard this story from Weinreb himself, from Rabbi Tzvi, I think Tzvi Hirsch, Weinreb? Tzvi Weinreb. I heard the story from the man himself. And he told me that ever since, when he has a question, like a big question, he goes into a quiet place and he thinks about the question with the confidence that he has the answer inside. And he says, I cannot tell you how many times the Rebbe's advice bore tremendous fruit. By the way, if you think that a tzaddik, that a righteous person, that the Rebbe didn't realize who was on the phone, even with him being anonymous, all right, yeah.
This is the antithesis of what we talked about last week.
Every week is a new opportunity. Which is collaboration.
You're supposed to look at both sides of, okay.
Sometimes you need the other side. No, sometimes you need the other side to remind you the answers that you have inside. Doesn't mean that you can't discuss it also. But sometimes we have it inside. Doesn't mean we should always go it alone. But sometimes we're the best equipped to answer our own questions. You're right, it's a little bit of the antithesis. But you need both sides.
But is the implication, though, is it even though you're having a conversation with yourself, you're having a conversation not only with yourself? I don't mean to add kind of a schizophrenic layer to
right.
it, in the sense
right,
that you're
right.
that's not what I'm implying.
There's a complicated dialogue within. Listen, I think both are true. I think oftentimes we have answers inside that we're afraid to open or pursue, and sometimes we need to discuss. I think both are true. I think we should do both. I'm a proponent of it.
Like your mother used to say, you know what you should say.
Right.
You know.
My mother would say, make a decision, and then just decide one of the two options, and then see how you feel about it.
You're saying that I'll tell you that you're wrong.
And then you can't, right, exactly. You should have done the other one. All right, let's continue. All right, number 4. I've never wanted to serve a God whose ways would be understandable to mere mortals. When somebody says they don't understand the ways of God, the Kotzker Rebbe said, that's a good thing, right? Because if we did understand God, who would want to serve a God that you and I could wrap our heads around? Number 5, he who doesn't see God everywhere isn't capable of seeing him anywhere, right? If God is not everywhere, then God is not anywhere. Our definition of God is the all-encompassing truth. So if God is not that, then God is not in a particular place, because that's not God then. If God is only found, it's like truth. If truth is only found in one bucket, it's not true. It's not true. If something's true, it's going to be found many different places. Okay.
Are these statements, were they contextualized, or are they just, are these...
You're saying, did he just walk into a room and drop one of these lines and walk out?
Here's that.
Here's what I need to tell you. Boom. I don't know. My understanding is that these were in the context of conversations. And, did he drop a mic and walk out? Or did it go on? Kind of feels like. But he was very sharp. These are sharp statements.
What would be different between
Rabbi?
Huh? Yeah, exactly.
It seemed to me that maybe these are conversations he had with himself. That's how he figured them out.
He definitely thought about these before he,
Right.
yes, correct. He honed it, yeah, 100%.
Not as to preparing, a class for somebody else, but this is things that he went through personally and shared his experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that, 100%.
According to Chabad.org,
Dang.
we have collected 48 sayings that have been attributed to the Rebbe of Kotzk.
There you go. Let's take a look. Let's keep on going. Number 6, this is a classic one. Where is God? Wherever he is allowed in. That's a powerful one. Number 7, the way of the world is such that parents feel the pain of their children, but the children are oblivious to the suffering of their parents. Right? Parents know what the kids are going through. Kids, they don't always know what the parents are thinking or feeling. Likewise, God feels our pain, but we are blind to his misery. It evokes this notion of I don't know, for me, there's a lot of things that we do here on earth, and sometimes we do things to each other, and we think that, we make excuses or whatever it is, and we make it, we make it justifiable, we make it livable to ourselves and for ourselves, but it causes us or causes others pain. But that's the extent of our thought process, of how much pain it causes us or the other person, or maybe even us, but we're able to kind of like justify it and push that pain away. But we don't really think often about how God is feeling about this, right? What are the larger effects of it? Because the nature of children is that we think about ourselves and we don't think about the parent. So I think that's a powerful statement. Okay, number 8. I, ego, is a thief which must be banished from the heart. I robs lots of things. Happiness. Our whole text is all about the dangers of the I. Number 9, serving yourself. Back to ego. Serving yourself is a form of idolatry. The first step of idolatry is serving self. Number 10.
Wait, back to number 8 and 9.
Sure.
So Hillel's, if I am not for myself, who will be? And then he says, but if I'm only for myself, what am I?
Yeah.
So is he distinguishing between ego and...
If I am for myself, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me is not a statement of ego.
Right, so
It's a statement of, it's a statement of kind of practicality. If I don't take care of myself, how can I take care of others? On some level. I'm not saying that's what he's saying in that one statement, but take the statement together, it's kind of like you have to put on your own oxygen mask and then help someone with their oxygen mask.
So sometimes there's a fine line between taking care of yourself and...
But here's the deal. If I take care of myself in order to serve others, that's not ego-driven. It's purpose-driven. So there's the difference between the activity on the outside could look the same, but what's inside could be radically different. The question is, what drives this activity? Is it pleasure or purpose? Is it self or selflessness? Is it ego or is it the other? So the I, the ego, is the part that oftentimes leads to not so good. But taking care of self and all that stuff is not in and of itself a negative. Even ego on some level is not evil unto itself. One of the great teachings, one of the really powerful teachings of Jewish mysticism is that the human ego, with all of its narcissism, actually perfectly reflects the source, the divine source. Maybe, narcissism is a very loaded term, so let's drop that term for a second. But the notion that human beings have, that we are our own creator, and there's nothing above us, and we're like the be all and end all, and like this is it, we're everything, we're the top of the food chain. That awareness perfectly mirrors God's awareness, because God knows for himself that there's nothing above God. Are you with me on this? Yes. The angels feel that there's something higher than them. Their consciousness doesn't perfectly reflect their creator. Although they're aware of their creator, but their consciousness is not a mirror image of God's consciousness. Whereas the ego, the lower ego, is a reflection of the higher ego. Doesn't mean that it's not ugly sometimes, or shouldn't be used for the right purpose, or could be used for a destructive purpose, but it reflects the divine ego. The Mishnah says, every person must say the world is created for me. Yeah, but the point is that the inherent psyche of the human being that says that I exist and I am my own creator, like there's nothing higher than me. That's what God says. There's nothing higher than me. Now God's statement happens to be true and ours happens to be false, but that consciousness or that awareness, right, on some level mirrors the divine awareness, which is why I like to say that God is an atheist. If you translate an atheist as someone who doesn't believe in anything higher than self, guess what? God is an atheist. Okay, moving on. That's one of my lines, not one of his lines. Number 10. If you say something you don't truly believe, and even if you emit a sigh that does not come from the depth of your heart, any motion that is not entirely true, you are guilty of perjury. Yeah, Marlene, I would agree with you. These are things that he worked on for himself, avodah, about trying to get to this place of truth. Number 11, if you need to hide something, something is wrong.
Another mother statement.
Yeah. But you know what? I don't know that anything true has ever been said. Then number 11, if you need to hide something, something is wrong. So true. Yes, he did. Yeah. Exactly. That's another Hasidic master, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak Raditchev, who said that. Number 12. If a person maintains his faith when he is in trouble and sees no solution, is his faith true? What choice did he have? But if a person has all that he needs and still chooses to place his trust in God,
Let's see how it's looking on the calendars for next week. All with Bob Mason of FX Empire. This is...
All right, let's try that one again. If a person maintains his faith, first I thought it was me, but then he has a British accent. If a person maintains his faith when he's in trouble and sees no solution, is his faith true? What choice did he have? But if a person has all that he needs and still chooses to place his trust in God, that's true faith. You know, there's a famous statement: there are no atheists. Speak about atheists. No atheists in a foxhole. So to believe in God, or to reach out to God when times are tough, he says, yeah, that's relatively easier. What's hard is when everything is going really well, to say, where's it coming from? It's coming from God. That's harder. It's easier to turn to God in times of need than in times of plenty. Much of the book of Deuteronomy, the final book of the Torah, is Moses speaking to the Jewish people shortly before his passing. And time and again, Moses says, you're going to go into the land, and life is going to be amazing. You're going to have land, and you're going to have food, and you're going to have all the blessings. Please, Moses says, don't forget about God. There's less concern about forgetting about God when you need something. That's why the biblical commandment about blessings over food is about after we eat the food. Because to ask God for food when you're hungry is easier than to thank God for food after you're satisfied. Because after you're satisfied, I don't need anything. So if I don't need anything, so who needs God? It's like the famous joke about the guy in the parking space. We know this one? Yes? He has a meeting, he's very late, and there's no parking space, and he's going around the parking lot, and he's like praying to God, God, please help me, just give me a parking space. I promise I'll go to synagogue Saturday, no parking space. I'll go next Saturday also, no. I'll go 4 in a row, nothing. I'll do this, that, the other, give tzedakah, nothing. Finally, a spot opens up. The man turns to God and says, God, don't worry about anything. I got the spot covered. We're good. Or he says, like, deal's off. I got a spot. You with me on that? Yes. Okay, fine. Could have set it up better, but that's the punchline. The punchline is, when we're desperate for something, we make all the deals. And when we have what we need, deal's off. Deal's off because we have no needs. So it's harder to trust in God or to have faith in God when things are rolling. The good times are rolling. Number 13, I never regretted telling the truth. Number 14, I never feared getting sick, but I dreaded the coddling that follows. Interesting. Number 15. The loftier the soul, the greater the challenges and darkness surrounding it, like the most valuable pearl, which is set in the largest encasement. Think about a treasure that's put into a very complicated safe or whatever it is, behind closed doors, iron bars or whatever it is. I'm just thinking of those safes with those big, like, spiky wheel things. And so here you have a beautiful treasure locked behind, stuck in a case somewhere. And so he says, the loftier the soul, the greater the challenges that surround it. I mean, I feel like 15 is such a truth that we see. Yeah? How people that have truly lofty souls are oftentimes have a lot of adversity in their lives, a lot of adversity and a lot of darkness around that beautiful soul. Number 16, the body finds it easier to accept all kinds of suffering than to accept the yoke of heaven. Sometimes a person will find it easier or go through difficult times, and he's suggesting that if we just turn it over to God, things can be resolved, but we hold on to it sometimes to our own detriment. Number 17, God made the human upright, unlike the animal who walks on all fours. While the beast sees only the earth, man can also look up toward the heavens. Number 18, the heavens will always remain heavens, but the earth we can elevate and make heavenly. Number 19, why do you call out to God and beseech that he have mercy on Israel? Better to call out to the people that they have mercy on God. Number 20. Elijah the prophet will not enter through the door or even the window. He will come by way of your heart and your mind. Elijah the prophet is famously the Mevaser Hagula, the one who tells of the coming of Mashiach. And the point here is that there's no miracle other than personal change. Number 21, silence is the most beautiful of all sounds. 22, when a person has a reason to cry, and he wants to cry, but is not able to cry, that's the greatest cry of all. 23, a great generation can make do with petty leaders, but a lowly generation needs great leaders. Number 24, even a wagon driver is a leader, and woe is to the wagoner whose horses take control. It can be understood on so many levels. Huh? Go down the middle of the road, exactly. Yeah.
There's like a quick, there was a guy, Louis Broussard is a writer for the paper here, and he had a great saying. He said, in the dog pull, the lead dog, unless you're the lead dog, the view never changes.
Right. That is true also. Yep. Yeah, woe is to the wagoner whose horses take control. What does that mean for us? It means every person is a leader. No matter who you are, what you do, your profession, whatever, everyone's a leader. But woe to us if our horses take control, if our base instincts are running the show, and not our mind and higher values. Okay, number 25. The most dangerous thing of all is habit. Getting stuck to do something just because we did it yesterday. That's the worst.
That's principle of intelligence training.
Yeah.
Habits will get you killed.
Habits will get you killed, yeah. Who is it? Carol Dweck? That wrote mindfulness.
Well, not mindfulness, the mindset.
Growth mindset, yes. About the elasticity of mind. Yeah, about being open to new possibilities. It's about, like what Marlene said, it's about seeing new vistas and new landscapes and not just the same view again every day after day after day. Well, I saw this yesterday, might as well put myself in the same position today. All right, number 26. Not every thought should be said. Wow, this is really important. Not every thought should be said. Not every speech should be written down, and not all writings are fit for print. Wow. Wow. 26, bringing the heat.
He knew about the internet.
He knew so much.
But he didn't know
Somehow he did. 26 is right there. Twitter. Oh God. 27. Oh, and this is why the whole thing. 27. This is what I wanted to get to. If I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, and you are you. But if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you.
I definitely remember your email.
Because
I was like, huh?
Yeah. Does it help when I read it? Does it make more sense? Okay, look. If I am I because I am I, I'm an individual, and you are you because you are you. Great. Diversity. I am I, and you are you, and the implication is we can get together. But if I am I because you are you, in other words, like I'm not standing for anything, I'm just conforming or whatever. If I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. We're not dealing with real people. But I want to focus on the first part, because the key to understanding this whole mechanism is that it's true individuality that leads to unity. It's true diversity that leads to unity. It's when we don't believe in individuality that the greatest conflict begins.
That hive mentality.
Cultures that say, societies that preach, governments that mandate that everyone look the same and everyone think the same, is that unity?
It's conformity.
It's conformity, and it's the greatest enemy of unity. Because I am not I, and you are not you. No one is themselves. The greatest, someone's tweeting at me, the greatest ally, or the greatest catalyst for unity is an appreciation of diversity. If you can appreciate who you are, and you can appreciate who the other person is as distinct from you, now you can get along. But if you don't see them as them, or you don't see you as you, then we can't even start the conversation. We're not even in the same arena to be able to have some sort of real unity going on. It's a manufactured uniformity or conformity that's not genuine and not healthy. Number 28. Might as well finish them, and then we're going to jump into chapter 11. 28. Death is but a change of circumstances, like moving homes. But a wise person sees to it that the new home is better and nicer than the old one. And how do you make sure that the new home is better? You got to invest in your new home, right? So we had a conversation last night about near-death experiences with Mrs. Nomi Freeman, and the point that she made, one of the points that she made a few times, is that the currency in the hereafter, the currency in the afterlife, is not money, and it's not fame, and it's not ego, and it's not honor and glory and whatever it is. It's not fancy clothes or fancy cars or fancy homes. What's the currency in the in the hereafter, in the next world? The currency is love and goodness and mitzvot and good deeds. So if you want to, it's not like if you want. How do we invest in that home, in the next home? It's by living a good life, being a mensch here right now. Okay, make sense? Yes? Okay. 29. Don't fool yourself and don't imitate your fellow. 30. So-and-so, he is amazing. He learned so much. When does he have time to know anything? I'm not sure what he means, honestly. I think what it means is,
You can't learn anything when your mind's
If you
already full of
substitute
stuff.
the word understand for know, then it makes sense. So if he's saying learning is just the acquisition of stuff, of knowledge, but when
Right.
does he have time to really think about it, to understand?
that's what I was thinking also, yeah. In other words, if it's all about getting more and more and more,
it's just more coverage or accumulation rather than depth.
Yeah, I was thinking also the difference between book smart and street smart, but not like street smarts and like street, but experiential learning, right? Or if you're learning so much out of the books, but what about life knowledge, life wisdom?
What's it good?
Yeah, what are we doing with it?
Well, jack of all trades, but a master of none.
Yes.
But also means that is Chokmah versus Bina, that this person is just pure Chokmah and no time for Bina.
Right, so pure like theoretical and not application. Good. 31. In Torah scholarship, there are geniuses, but there are no geniuses in Hasidism, in like Jewish mysticism. To become a Chassid, one must toil. Nice. 32. There are rabbis who are so great that they can revive the dead, but reviving the dead is God's business. A rebbe needs to be able to revive the living. I love that. And as a true tzaddik, a true rebbe could actually revive the dead. But that's not the point. It's to take people who are alive and make them really alive. All right. 33. There are not enough sacks in the world to contain the wily arguments of the evil inclination. Yeah, all right. So what does it mean? It means that if you're trying to nab the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, good luck. There's always a new angle, a new something. 34. I want people to refrain from wrongdoing not because they fear sin, but because they don't have the time. Keep busy, stay out of trouble. Number 35. Oh, this is also classic. There's nothing more complete than a broken heart, and there is nothing more upright than a crooked ladder. There's more to this one.
Yeah, you going more on this one?
Yeah, there's more in this one. There are 4 statements. He says, I don't remember all 4, but definitely there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. Yeah, that makes sense. In other words, like a broken heart, that means somebody is really present, really feeling and not pretending. The person's real when their heart is open. There's nothing more upright than a crooked ladder. If you're trying to get on top of a roof, so you kind of need to lean the ladder against something, right? So if the ladder's crooked, that's a good thing. But he says there's another statement. There's nothing more crooked than the straight face of a con man. That's the opposite, right? So there's something that's straight, that's crooked, right? And there's something that's crooked, that's straight. Anyway, number 36. I will, this is bad. I want to, this is neither here nor there. I am, this is good. Right? If somebody says, I will, yeah, I will do this, no, that's you're pushing it off. I want to, okay, you want to, but we're still not there yet. I am, perfect. Tell me what you are. Now we're talking. Number 37. Poverty and hunger are nothing to fear, for they come from God. I fear only the callousness and cruelty that come along with hunger. Number 38. Through money, even the incorruptible can become corrupted. Yeah. They say 3 things are axioms, truths in life. Money, mashka, and chassidus. I'm going to translate. Money, I don't need to translate. Mashka means alcohol, but like hard liquor. And chassidus is like Kabbalah, like the Chassidic philosophy. So these 3 things are guaranteed to work. Money is guaranteed to make a person meshuga. It's guaranteed to make a person a little bit crazy or corrupted. Mashka is guaranteed to make a person shikr, which means inebriated, right? Drunk. And chassidus, Jewish mysticism, is guaranteed to make a person more refined in character. If a person says, I have money, but I'm not corrupted, you don't have enough money. Get more money, you'll become corrupted. If a person says, I drank, and I'm not shikr, I'm not drunk, you didn't drink enough. If a person says, I studied this stuff, but I'm not more refined, keep on studying. That's the Chassidic, that's another Chassidic statement, not included in these, but related to the message about money. Next, 30, the Torah says about bribery. It says judges shouldn't take bribes. Shocker, right? It's a biblical commandment, prohibition against taking a bribe as a judge. So it says, what's wrong with taking a bribe? Because it covers the eyes of the pure and confuses the mind of the righteous. Or the words of the righteous. I don't remember the exact quote in Hebrew. point is, the Torah refers to this person as pure and righteous. And even someone who's pure and righteous is susceptible to the effects of not only money, but bias. Bias is a reality. Okay, number 39. Joy is wonderful. Through it, one can escape the worst of circumstances. Powerful statement right there. Number 40. Something that I love this one. Something that can be acquired in a single hour can be lost in half an hour. It's so true. We work on something, we work so hard for something, and we can mess it up so much faster. Destroy it in a minute. I wouldn't even give it a half an hour. No, human beings, we can work a lifetime on something and mess it up just like that. Seconds. Yeah, 41. A person has two eyes, one to see the greatness of God and the other to see his own smallness. Number 42. A person isn't a goat whose every movement is heralded by the bell on his neck. I don't even know what that means. A person isn't a goat, but I like it. It's colorful. Person isn't a goat. I think I know what that means.
Because, they put bells on the goats, so they wandered off, they could find them.
Yeah, but I think it means that we don't need to make so much noise in life. You don't need to be so noisy, and everyone should know where you're going and what you're doing. Like, oh, you'll never guess where I went, and I did this mitzvah, I did that thing. You know what? It's fine to be on the down low and to do things quietly. Low key. It's good to be low key.
Don't Twitter.
Huh?
Don't tweet.
Don't, exactly. Well, only good things. Number 43. Even the greatest person who has never sinned must pray to God that he not come to believe in himself. Again, ego. For self-aggrandizement is worse than the worst sin. Look at that. He doesn't say because ego will lead to the next sin or to the first sin, whatever it is. But that itself is the worst, is worse than the worst sin. There are three, this is so good. There are three inns that every person visits during his earthly journey. The inn of jealousy, the inn of desire, and the inn of glory. I managed to leave the first two fairly quickly and have never returned. But the third, the inn of glory, I struggled mightily to leave until I felt that my very veins were snapping. The inn of jealousy means straight up being jealous, coveting, looking at someone else. The inn of desire is desire. Whatever desire, every person has their own yetzer hara, has their own desires, their own evil inclination, and what they desire. Some people money, some people other things, whatever it is. Everyone's got their own thing, so that's the second inn. And the third inn is the inn of glory, covet, needing the honor of other people, the respect, right? The likes, whatever it is. Back to social media. So he says, the first two are easier than the third. The third, to break that hold of the human need to feel respected and honored by others, to break that, the need to be liked by others. To be liked by others is a good thing. But to run after that, to feel that you need that. So to break that, it's the very essence. He says, my veins were snapping. This is also an indication what Marnin said. These are things that he worked through himself. All of these, I'm sure.
He must really have had a lot of work against ego.
Yeah.
He
You see a pattern. You see a pattern in his. He had no patience. First of all, he was brutally honest. He had no patience for dishonesty or for ego.
Well, he must have struggled against
Yeah.
ego.
Yeah. You see it.
But really struggled
Yeah.
against ego.
He says, my veins were snapping. Inn of glory is basically ego. Number 45, blaze your own path. You can be sure that it has not been sullied by others. He was a maverick. You saw that in the first line, right? Don't be a horse that goes down the middle. Be your own mensch. Be your own person. 46, this is great. More important than writing is erasing. Any writer will tell you that the real writing comes in the editing, right? And what you take out. So more important than writing is erasing. Also in life, it's good to know how to get rid of stuff. Number 47, yeah. 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 The empty pages. Yeah.
I read that he did write a fair amount and then burned his writings before he passed.
Makes sense.
Does that make kind of sense in this context?
It makes sense in his personality that he would write something and burn every last shred of it.
Can you elaborate?
he was a different kind of, he was like stuck, he was fierce, and he was bold, and if he felt like others weren't ready for it, or if that wasn't the ultimate truth, he would not spare something for sentiment. He wouldn't keep it around for just keeping it around. So if it wasn't good, it's out. Or if others weren't ready for it, it's out. He has another line that's not in here, which I love. He was teaching his students, and he said, you should always view yourself at any moment like the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is standing above you with a sword on your neck. Ready to, like at any moment, any temptation, whatever, can strike and take us down. So always imagine that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is at our neck has a sword at our neck. So one of his students asked, and what happens if we don't feel that? So you know what he said? He said, then it's already got your neck. Then he's already made that cut. That's how he was sharp. And obviously, I mean,
Also, it could be, if his writings were taken, then people would live through that as opposed to doing what he says to do.
Correct. It's easy to have, 100%. Easy to have those crutches and not do the work. Look, we're always looking to get out of the work. So, okay, number 47. Some people speak words of Torah in order to climb to the seventh heaven. I sought words of Torah in order to crawl into the innards of the listener. Number 48. If you have no talit, which is the prayer shawl, wrap yourself in the four corners of the earth and pray. That's beautiful. I don't know exactly what that means, but I love it. I love it because it's a little bit vague, right? Isn't it poetic? I think it's very poetic. It's like, it's just, it's open. You're right. It's like so open to just.
It creates a feeling.
Creates a feeling. And with
the language is going to
either Yiddish or Hebrew. Yeah. I'm sure he spoke it in Yiddish. He spoke Yiddish, huh? For sure, Yiddish. Eastern Europe, wherever. Poland. That's a safe guess. Safe guess. Poland, why not? Okay, let's pass these around. Let's jump into chapter 11. Okay, let's do this. I printed new copies because I thought we need to supplement a little bit. These are bigger than the other ones. So I have now, this looks like the large print Reader's Digest version of it. But let's send some around. Let's make things, we'll give choice. So we have two sizes. Make things complicated. It's all the same. All right, and take your preference. Okay, let's jump in. Chapter 11. Oh, chapter 11 reminds me of, oh, you already have it? Yeah, if you already have it, you don't need another copy. Okay, chapter 11 reminds me of the story, the businessman and the rabbi. You guys know this one? The businessman and the rabbi? So the businessman comes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, I'm going through a difficult time in my business, and I need some advice. And the rabbi says, look, I'm not a businessman, so if you need some, spiritual advice, I can help. But business advice, you should probably speak to a businessman or business consultant. So he's like, no, I believe in like the power of spirituality and everything, and I want you to give me a blessing. Give me some advice. So the rabbi says, look, here's what I can tell you. Sometimes when I'm stuck at a crossroads in a tough decision, I take a copy of the Bible, of the Torah, and I open it up randomly. And whatever is on that page, I look at it as a sign from God and kind of glean from that advice on that random page that I open. So he says, look, maybe you want to do that. Man says, thank you. And he goes and he walks out of the office of the rabbi. Anyway, a few months pass, and the rabbi's walking down the street one day by the synagogue, and the businessman pulls up alongside of him. And he says, Rabbi, how are you? He says, Shalom Aleichem, good to see you. So he says, Rabbi, I took your advice a few months ago. It worked wonderfully. Everything worked out. All my business issues solved. The rabbi says, what'd you do? He's like, I opened up the Chumash, the Torah, the Bible, and my answer was right there. He says, what did you open to? He says, chapter 11. Okay. So, chapter 11 of our text. You may have heard me say this story before, probably when we were up to a chapter 11 of our last text. It's my go-to chapter 11 joke. So chapter 11, here we have once again a discussion about the dangers of canceling, negating, disregarding other people. Let's jump right in. Chapter 11, 21, page 21. Similarly in Avodah, when it comes to divine service, such an attitude of ego, prevents cooperation and unity. One will not value the divine service of another person, or consider him to be an oved, i.e. one who devotes himself earnestly to divine service through worship and self-refinement. In other words, when a person is consumed by their own ego, a person will not value what another person does and will not consider them to be someone who is sincere. Not because they aren't sincere, but because your own ego won't allow you to grant that to the other person, to concede that about the other person. Because if they're spiritual, if they're working on themselves, so what does that mean for me? Do I feel less about myself? And how does that make me feel? And it's about me, and therefore I need to negate them to make myself feel better. Like I told the story a few weeks ago, it's like the two children who were playing, the fifth Rabbi and his brother, the Razah, and the older brother who was shorter digs a hole and pushes the younger brother inside who was taller and says, "Now I'm taller than you." And their father said, if in order to be taller you have to make someone else smaller, then that's not truly being tall or great. Greatness lies in being great, not in pushing someone else down. But here we have a situation where because of one's ego, one cannot give room for the other person to be somebody who's working the spiritual path. They have to cut them down. They can't allow them to be someone of merit. He will minimize, back inside, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in. He will minimize the worth of the other person's service and scorn and negate his positive qualities. I mean, listen, we could speak theoretically or we could actually get real. How many times have we looked at someone and minimized their qualities to make ourselves feel better? Yes? Okay, maybe not us, but others, because they're terrible, right? No, I'm kidding, right? Right, doing the same. Right, we look at others who are doing good things, but we find something to bring them down, to minimize the good that they're doing, in order to make ourselves feel better. When he sees, back inside, when he sees that another person possesses a fault, albeit a superficial one, which does not at all affect the main body of his service, he will magnify it. He finds one fault. Oh, this guy's terrible. Forget it, right? One fault. He will magnify it, speaking about it often and humiliating him. Should he discover a character flaw in his fellow, now forget about a little fault. What about a character flaw? And he says, which is inevitable, for who is so righteous as to have no flaws? Right? He will say that this flaw proves that any good his fellow possesses is really of no consequence. Canceled. This is all born of ego. Because I have ego, I can't grant another person, I can't deem another person spiritually connected and plugged in, because that makes me feel less than, or that makes me feel uncomfortable. So I need to, in my own head at least, and maybe even to others, I need to bring them down. So when I notice their qualities, I balance that immediately, or I counter that, or I negate that with their flaws. Oh, that person, are you kidding me? You know what they did? You know their flaws? Forget it. That guy, nothing. Canceled. I love how he says between the dashes that when he discovers a flaw in his fellow, and that's obviously going to happen because who is so righteous as to have no flaws? Everyone's flawed. Is it surprising that person's not perfect? We do this as a society all the time. again, I have to temper this by saying there are situations, many situations, where a person does something truly egregious and terrible and horrific, obviously. But the fact that somebody has a flaw should not surprise us. Because just because they're a celebrity or whatever doesn't make them an angel. They're still a human being. But we love being all like surprised and shocked that people have challenges and people are not perfect. It's like, yeah, they're not perfect, obviously. Let's get back to this. So, he will exaggerate the evil to the point that he will exaggerate the evil to the point where any good the person possesses will be unnoticeable. And he continues to say, this is simply not true. All of that is what we do. But now the Rebbe writes, this is not true. For that individual's divine service and prayer, Torah study, and the fulfillment of mitzvos is in itself good and constitutes his primary labor throughout the day. Again, he's referring to, obviously, to a specific type of person that is overwhelmingly and by and large a good person, involved in praying, involved in studying Torah, involved in doing good deeds, and that's what they're mostly involved in. And yes, any one of us could tear that person down by pointing out their flaws, but look at the person. The person's a good person. The negative character trait he possesses is merely one not yet corrected. He says, that doesn't define the person. That's just something they need to work on. And he quotes a verse. He quotes a verse from Eov, from the book of Job. Man is born like a wild young donkey. Not like a wild donkey, a wild young donkey with a lot of energy. What does that mean? Para Adam Yulad. Or Yuvalid, I forget the punctuation in the Hebrew. Para Adam. A person is born as a wild young donkey. So the fact that we possess animalistic tendencies and sometimes we succumb to them should not surprise anyone. And that's not grounds to negate or cancel all of the good of their character and all of the good that they've done. All it means is that that person is not yet a perfect angel. And honestly, that should be expected. He is born, he continues, human beings, he is born in an unrefined state, and he must strive, this is referring to everybody, and he must strive to correct his character traits throughout his entire life. This service, in other words, the idea that we have challenges, that we have moral challenges, and spiritual challenges, and character challenges, is something to be expected as part and parcel of the human condition. We're born by divine design as a wild young donkey, and our task in life, our entire life, is to slowly and steadily push against that and try to refine ourselves and make ourselves better. Are we ever going to be finished with the task? Probably not. Work in progress. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about working it and pushing against it. And sometimes we'll be successful, and sometimes, many times, we won't be successful. But that doesn't mean that the good that we do, or the good that others do, simultaneous to their own personal struggles, it doesn't mean that the good is not real or doesn't exist just because there's the other side. One of the major teachings of Jewish mysticism is the notion, the doctrine of the two souls. And the two souls mean that we have a divine soul, a higher soul, and an animal soul, a lower soul. And each are true and each are real, and they don't negate the other. You can have a beautiful, soulful experience, and the next moment be mired in a very deep temptation internally, a very deep struggle internally. And it doesn't mean that that holy experience wasn't holy. It doesn't mean that this temptation is not a temptation either. Both are true, both are real, but they don't cancel each other out. Let's continue. This service is alluded to in the verse, the days of our years. I love this. There are 70 years in them. The verse, this is from Psalms. It says in Tehillim, it says in Psalms, King David writes, the lifespan of a person is about 70 years. The Hebrew word for in them, bahem, is spelled almost the same as the word for an animal, behema. It says a person has in him, or in them, 70 years. In them is bahem. The Hebrew word bahem, in them. but it's also related very closely in etymology to the word behema, which means animal, which means that we are like the behema, we're like the animal. We have animalistic instincts. And a person is given 70 years in which to refine the 7 evil character traits of his animal soul. Remember we spoke about the 10 sefirot? And how there are 3 intellectual and 7 emotional, and how in the world of Tohu there was chaos, and that produces 7 evil or corrupt manifestations of the 7 traits. Each of the 7 emotional character traits is imbued, or not imbued, is comprised of all 10 sefirot. So you have 10 times 7 is 70. 70 years. Again, as a general lifespan, please God, we should live to 120, right? But 70 years, as kind of like a general lifespan, means that we're meant to work on all 7 challenging character traits inside.
Rabbi?
Yes.
But why are these labeled evil?
It's not evil, it's not absolutely evil, but it could lead to evil. So he's just colloquially referring to them as evil character traits. The character traits themselves, chesed, gvur, tiferet, they're not evil, but they have an evil twin, or they have an evil form. And he's saying our job in life is to work on refining our characters. The premise is we don't start off as pure tzaddikim, as righteous individuals. We start off as para adam, as wild young donkeys. That's how we start. We start off with challenging characteristics, character traits. Also the good stuff, but also the challenging ones. And our job in life, 70 years, is to go through and correct and refine and push against. And are we ever going to complete it? Who knows? But that's the work that we're doing. Let's continue. I think we'll just get... I know we're late. Actually, I don't have the time. What time is it? My watch is wrong.
Yeah, 10:54.
Perfect. That clock is no. You can that clock. It's decorative. But my watch at some point over the weekend stopped, and I meant to change it this morning. So right now it's 4:09. Yeah, it's 4:09 somewhere. Or no, perfect. 10:54. Perfect timing. So we're going to finish chapter 11. Let's jump right back in. Middle of this paragraph, top of 22. Okay, so a person is given 70 years in which to refine the 7 evil character traits. Not that the character traits themselves are wholly evil, but the evil of them, right? Of his animal soul. This process of self-correction, I love that phrase, right? This process of self-correction, tikkun, cannot be completed at once. Rather, quoting a verse from the Torah regarding the conquering of the land of Israel, which had 7 nations, which are a euphemism, as we said in the opening chapters of this text, for the 7 evil characteristics of the human being. Ma'at ma'at agashenu mipanecha. Little by little, I will drive the heathen Canaanites out from before you, which means that the 7 negative characteristics need to be driven out slowly. Slow and steady. It's not going to happen all at once. If you think you're going to refine yourself and become a perfect tzaddik, a perfectly righteous individual, all in one fell swoop, there's going to be a really severe wake-up call, because that ain't going to happen. So it's going to lead to all sorts of negativity, despondency or frustration, or whatever it is, but it's not going to happen. No, don't expect it to happen. Slow and steady wins the race. It's not a race, but slow and steady gets the job done. Little by little, I will drive the heathen Canaanites out from before you. And it's not about God doing the work, although it might have been back in biblical times. It's about us doing that work today in our own hearts, in our own characters, little by little. I.e., considerable effort is called for, but also slow and steady. Let's continue. Only after extensive endeavors in prayer, meditation on godliness, and strengthening of the attributes of one's godly soul, which happens, by the way, through feeding the godly soul. You can't strengthen. I once heard, I don't think it's a Jewish proverb, but there's maybe a Native American proverb that says that every person has 2 wolves inside. Right? I don't know exactly what it's phrased. Higher, lower, selfish, selfless, whatever. And so which one is stronger? The one you feed. right? So the question is, which one are we feeding? If we're living a materialistic, animalistic life, all we're feeding, or not all, what we're primarily feeding is the animal soul. So it's not surprising that the negative, the animal soul is not evil by its nature, but it could lead to evil. So it should not be a surprise that that's going to be a dominant force to contend with in our lives. How do we drive that out? How do we push away the negativity that's inherent in the human condition? So he says, I'm going to repeat that sentence because it's really powerful. And it's really a pathway of living. Only after extensive endeavors in prayer, number one, prayer, communication with God. Number two, meditation on godliness, which happens through studying of divine wisdom, like Kabbalah. So it's studying and then meditating on it. Meditating, I should also mention, meditating in Judaism is different than Eastern meditation. Eastern meditation is about clearing and emptying the mind. Jewish meditation, or Kabbalistic meditation, is about focusing the mind on divine ideas. It's not about clearing the mind. It's about focusing on godly ideas, godly realities. So again, prayer, meditation on godliness, and strengthening the attributes of one's godly soul. That's by feeding the godly soul. Do godly things. So through these three paths, it is possible to weaken, refine, and purify the natural emotions of the animal soul over the 70-year lifespan of a person, give or take. And since the above-mentioned individual, so now he brings it back to the person that we would otherwise be canceling or shaming or putting down or dismissing or whatever, or gossiping about. And since the above-mentioned individual serves God, he will surely refine and correct his character traits. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Oh, you discovered a flaw? Mazel tov, they're human. You discovered an imperfection, a mistake they made? Of course they made a mistake. And so do you. They're human. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Overwhelmingly, overall, they're a good person. And they still have work to do? Of course. So give them a chance to work on it. And you work on your stuff. Let's continue. So before we continue, so just to summarize these two paragraphs, what he's saying is the ego is so devastatingly evil that what it does is it totally cuts down another human being. Because I don't want to feel like that person maybe has a quality that I don't possess, and maybe I should also do something, in that regard that they're doing, because I don't want to feel that. I want to feel superior to them. I will therefore tell myself and others how bad they are. All in order to serve ourselves. We tell lies about people. When I say lies, yeah, it may be true they have that struggle, but that's not who they are. So we tell lies, we mischaracterize other people, and we put magnifying glasses to the wrong thing. One of the teachings about eyes, we said one is to look at greatness of God and smallness of self, is also about perspective. 2 eyes gives you depth, right? So if I look at this camera, so the background is blurry. If I look at the back row, or at you all in front of me, so this is blurry. So in life, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the other person's qualities or on their flaws? If I focus on their qualities, then it's a call to action, or a more than call to action. It's a so what am I doing? If they're doing this, so what am I doing? Maybe it's a
mirror.
It's a mirror. Now I have to be introspective, and now I have to get serious about life a little bit, improve myself. But if I look at their flaws, I can let myself off the hook because they're a terrible person anyway. So who cares? Oh yeah, they did that. Of course they had to do that because look how bad they are. So I magnify, I focus on the flaws, and I minimize the virtues. And he says that's not true. Overwhelmingly, that person, again, not every person, but that person overwhelmingly is good. And if they're good, why are we mischaracterizing them and saying that they're terrible? All these negative things just to make ourselves feel better. It's all born of ego. Dismissing another person's virtues, playing up their flaws, demonizing them, right? Again, it's a strong word, but essentially demonizing them is terrible for them and for us. It's not true, and it's all born of the same place. It's all born from ego, not allowing them, not wanting them to have something that we don't have. Let's continue. Bottom paragraph 22. At times, one needs help from others in order to achieve this goal. For one's own self-love will sometimes blind him from recognizing a negative character trait. I love this. He says, okay, wait a second. You noticed a flaw in your friend. That's great, because maybe your friend needs you to point it out to him, but not to gossip about them to others, and not to tear them down in your own mind. Are you with me in the difference? He says, yeah, maybe that person has a flaw and they don't see it. So help them. Love them, care for them, and help them. Don't love yourself and tear them down. That's not the same thing at all. You can see a flaw and want to help them, or see a flaw and want to make yourself better by making that so massively big as to discredit their entire being, and that's not the same thing. So again, at times one needs help from others in order to achieve this goal. For one's own self-love will sometimes blind him from recognizing a negative character trait. A friend can make him aware of this fault and advise him on how to correct it, as we said in the previous chapter. If one really loves another person, he will do so privately. If you really care about them and you notice a flaw, great. Don't gossip about it to other people. Go to them and try to help them. If instead he dismisses him, scorns him, and humiliates him, particularly if he does so in public, this is a clear sign that it ain't coming from love. He hates him, and he does not seek his good, nor does he genuinely want what every individual should desire, the service of God within the world, for this is God's will and desire. If you really love God, you would want this person to be even better than they are. You demonizing them and not seeking their benefit, but their detriment, does not speak to your, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-righteous, whatever.
Yes.
Not nis, but what you're professing. You're professing self-righteousness. Oh, look at this guy's terrible. Oh, I can't believe it. Who does that thing? If you really care about truth, if you really care about goodness, so help them. How does it help? By demonizing them and discarding them. If you really care about God's service in the world, if you really care about making the world a better place, if you're really so self-righteous, if you're really so righteous, so then why wouldn't you want to help this person? Why would you dismiss them and shame them and blast their character to everyone else? How does that benefit anyone, including God's purpose for this world, including yourself? Makes us feel better. And here's the last paragraph. This is what it comes down to. The reason for this behavior is his own lack of service. A person feels guilty, or a person feels shame for not doing everything that they should be doing. His own service is not sincere. Although he serves God in prayer and in study, he is not sincere. Why not? Since he lacks bittul. He lacks selflessness, possessed as he is by his yeshus, i.e. his ego, and self-concern. This person, the person who, when they see a flaw in someone else, can't get past it, is stuck on it, and needs to tell everyone else about it, and needs to cancel them, and needs to shame them, and needs to besmirch their character, drag them through the mud, and tell themselves how much better they are than them, that's not driven by sincere divine service. That's driven by a sense of one's own inadequacy, and the only way to feel better about oneself is in order to shame and to demean someone else. And he says, therefore, that calls into question one's entire divine service. Why? Because it means clearly that I'm not approaching this from a place of bittul, from a place of selflessness. When I serve God, if my service of God needs to be better than someone else's, or if someone else's service of God bothers me so much that I have to find dirt on them, which is essentially what's going on in this chapter, yeah, then how sincerely am I serving God? If it's a contest, or if it's about how I feel about it, then is that really serving God? Or is that serving self? Is that using a mitzvah to make myself feel more self-important? And using that person's character flaw to make their mitzvah less important, and to make me feel better than them? And if the answer to those questions is yes, then don't bring God into the equation. God has nothing to do with this. It's straight up ego. It's straight up, I want to feel better than that person, and I don't like that person makes me feel threatened. And that's it. But don't bring God into it. Don't pretend that this has anything to do with God, or anything higher, or anything virtuous. Nothing to do with it. Oh, but what do you mean that person did such and such? How dare they? How could they? Really? Really? If you see a flaw in someone and you care about them, why don't you have a conversation with them? Why are we having this I don't mean our conversation right now, but why are you having that conversation with everyone else about how terrible that person is? Why not speak to them and try to encourage them? Unless it's about ego and about yourself and about winning. And if that's the case, then this is not sincere divine service. All right, so what's the message of chapter 11? Chapter 11 is, once again, it's all about bittul. It's all about, not about self. It's all about not being all about ourselves. It's about being about truth and sincerity, and about the other, and about love, and about connection. Unfortunately, we live in a world in which we love building people up for the sole sake of tearing them down. This is a societal thing. By the way, it's not a Twitter thing. It didn't start with Twitter. In the 80s, when I grew up, this was going on. I'm sure it was going on way before the 80s. This is like the 1880s. So this has been going on for a while. We build people up, and we tear them down, and we love it. We love it because it makes us feel better about ourselves. And that's not what life is about. Life is not about us feeling better about ourselves. Life is about making the world a better place. So, in the final analysis, the kryptonite, the antithesis of divine service and of holiness and of godliness is ego. The more ego, the less God is there. Ego, as we've said, stands for edging God out. So final analysis comes down to a question, simple question. Is God here or am I here? If I'm here, then God is probably not so here. Or less here. I know God is everywhere. That's a given. But I mean consciously. What are we aware of? What space are we in? What space are we in? So, chapter 11 tells us not to be so quick in throwing someone out, throwing someone under the bus, besmirching their character, gossiping about someone, dismissing them, to really look inside and ask, am I tempted to do all of this because it makes me feel better? And if that's the case, that's an invalid reason to do anything. If I'm really motivated by truth and by God and by what's right and wrong, have a conversation with that person. Try to influence them in a proper way. Or speak to someone who can influence them. And I know I've been mixing like society and like our own lives, so I don't know that we're gonna have that influence about speaking to, someone in the news that needs, maybe needs someone to speak to them. But in our own lives, it's the same thing. If we know someone, right? On a practical level, in our lives, it's easy to dismiss people that we're jealous of or whatever it is. It's important to get rid of that, focus on truth, focus on righteousness, focus on God, and move ego out of the way. Thank you for joining me for chapter 11 of our text.
looking up the dates that when this Rabbi Mendel lived.
Yes.
And where he lived, and he was about bar mitzvah age when Poland lost its independence.
Oh.
And was partitioned, and